The best way to predict the future is to invent it. Alan Kay might have said that. And it feels really relevant when you look at countries facing uncertain times.
Yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Absolutely. And, inventing the future, especially national security, it takes more than just, vision and money. It takes people, fundamentally.
It really does. Today, we're diving into a really critical issue for Germany. It's this defense dilemma they're facing. We've looked at a source that unpacks this whole complex situation, their plans, the budget, what's actually happening.
Yeah, and the core of it is this kind of paradox, isn't it? Germany's talking about seriously boosting its military, spending a lot more, but, they're finding it incredibly hard to actually get enough soldiers.
Exactly. So our mission here for this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to unpack the actual numbers behind this personnel shortage. Look at the reasons why, because it's definitely not just one thing. Explore the solutions being talked about, some of which are, pretty controversial, and just really think about what this all means.
And for you listening, look, this isn't just about Germany. If you're trying to get your head around how European security is shifting, how defense strategies are changing because of, everything going on,
Right.
then this is a central piece. It shows the real-world challenges nations are up against. Super relevant if you're following international relations or maybe prepping for exams like the UPSC, where understanding these kinds of current affairs issues with all their layers is key.
Okay, let's start with the ambition, the money side of things. Germany's really signaling a big change, a serious push to strengthen its defenses after, what many saw as years of underinvestment.
That's right. The source highlights their budget now sets aside 1.9% of GDP for defense, which is, very close to that NATO 2% target they've all been aiming for. It's a big step up for them.
And the plans, they go even further, don't they? There's talk, a projection even, of pushing that up massively, maybe up to 5% GDP by 2032.
Yeah, 5%. That's a huge number. And it's linked to this really bold goal. You hear it from figures like Chancellor Friedrich Merz, making the Bundeswehr, the German armed forces, the strongest conventional army in Europe.
Wow.
That's a powerful statement, clearly a reaction to the changed security situation in Europe.
So, okay, you've got the money flowing, you've got this huge ambition for the Bundeswehr. But here's the snag, the real dilemma. Despite all this cash and this clear strategic aim, they're hitting a wall. They just don't have enough soldiers.
And it's not like this is some quiet background worry. No, the urgency about this personnel gap, it's being shouted from the rooftops by senior defense officials. The warnings are, frankly, pretty stark.
They're even putting dates on it, like Bundeswehr Inspector General Carsten Breuer. He warned really directly that Russia might be ready to attack a NATO country by, 2029?
Yeah, 2029. And the quote itself is blunt. He said, "We have to be ready by 2029. If you ask me now, is this a guarantee that's not earlier than 2029? I would say no, it's not. So we must be able to fight tonight."
Fight tonight. That's incredibly direct. Immediate readiness needed, not just long-term planning.
Exactly. And Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, he's completely echoed that. Same timeline, same sentiment. He flat out said, we must be ready for war by 2029.
And Pistorius has also been really clear that this readiness isn't just about buying shiny new tanks or planes. He specifically lists finance, materials, and personnel. They're all critical pillars. And he added something that really hits home. In an emergency, we need strong young women and men who can defend this country.
It brings it right back to the people, doesn't it? It's not just about the tech. It's about having the individuals to operate it, to, put themselves on the line. Even thinking more, basically, the Homeland Defense Chief, Andreas Henne, raised concerns about just having enough soldiers to protect critical infrastructure inside Germany.
Right, just the basic Homeland Security stuff. That really shows how deep the shortfall goes. Okay, let's dig into the actual numbers, because this is where you see the scale of the problem. Latest figures, 181,150 troops currently.
Okay, 181,150. Now, compare that to what experts think Germany actually needs to meet its commitments. NATO stuff, leading brigades, defending its own territory. The estimate there is at least 260,000 soldiers.
Wow, that's a gap of nearly 80,000. Huge.
It is. Minister Pistorius gave a slightly less dramatic, but still very big number. He reckons they need about 50,000 to 60,000 more people in the standing army than they have now.
And it's not like they're just short and need to recruit more. The problem is the Bundeswehr is actually getting smaller, year on year. They had 183,000 in 2023. End of 2024, down to 181,150.
Right, and that drop is really significant because, as the source notes, they actually recruited over 20,000 new people in that same time frame.
So they're bringing people in the front door, but even more leaving out the back.
Exactly. Through retirement, people leaving the service, whatever the reason, recruitment just isn't keeping up with attrition. The official target, aiming for 203,000 by 2031, seems, well, pretty optimistic given the current trend is downwards.
And there was a government study back in March, wasn't there? It really detailed where the gaps are worst. Found something like 28% of the lower enlisted ranks. Just empty positions.
28%. That's nearly a third of your basic workforce. And okay, it gets a bit better higher up, but they're still short nearly 20% of commissioned officers. So, yeah, it's a problem right across the structure, but really hitting hard at the entry levels, those crucial roles for day-to-day tasks.
And adding to all this, the force is getting older. The Defense Commissioner, Eva Hogel, pointed this out. Average age went from about 32.5 in late 2019 up to 34 by late 2024.
Yeah, an aging force. That has implications. For physical readiness, maybe for long-term retention too.
So, okay, this is the German picture. But you mentioned earlier, this isn't just Germany, right? This connects to something bigger in Europe.
Absolutely critical point. Germany's struggle. It's part of this much wider trend, often called Europe's demographic time bomb.
Ah, right. The aging populations, falling birth rates, that whole story.
Precisely. Europe's facing this double whammy. Population's getting older, and in many places, numbers are flat or even shrinking. Professor Amit Gupta, who's mentioned in the source, he points out that the median age is set to rise in pretty much all the big European countries with significant armies. And yeah, that includes Russia, too.
The stats are pretty eye-opening. By 2030, most NATO countries, except Turkey, are projected to have a median age over 40.
Over 40, and some are way higher. Italy's looking at a median age of nearly 51. Spain and Greece are close behind, around 50.
Okay, so how does that directly link to finding soldiers, fewer young people overall?
That's the starting point. But it's also about family dynamics. If families are smaller, maybe just one or two kids, are they as willing to see their child go into a risky profession like the military, maybe deployed far away, compared to, say, 50 years ago when families were often larger?
That makes sense. The pressure might be higher for that child to choose something, well, safer or more predictable.
Exactly. And there's another factor mentioned. A whole generation has grown up in Europe largely without major war directly affecting them. So there isn't that same kind of background awareness of military conflict, maybe less family history of service.
Right.
That might have made joining the army seem like a more normal or even expected path in the past. For many young people today, it's just not really on their radar.
The source even mentions Ukraine, which is fascinating. A country literally fighting for its life.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently even there, getting enough young people to volunteer is a struggle.
Yeah, and that really highlights how deep these changes run. If you see reluctance even in Ukraine, then expecting young people in, say, Italy or Spain or Germany, places that haven't faced that kind of direct threat for decades, to eagerly sign up for potentially dangerous missions, well, it might just not be realistic anymore.
So that leads us straight to the big difficult question.
Yeah.
If voluntary recruitment isn't enough and the demographics are tough, how do you fill these gaps? And the idea that keeps coming up is conscription, bringing back compulsory service.
Yeah, it's back on the table. And Germany had this, remember, right through the Cold War, and only ended it in 2011 under Chancellor Merkel.
But bringing it back now, that's politically challenging, isn't it? Especially among the young people it would directly affect. There was that survey showing, 61% of 18 to 29-year-olds are against it.
Right, significant opposition there. But despite that, you've got key figures like Defense Minister Pistorius, he is SPD, remember really pushing to explore some form of mandatory service. He's been talking about it since early 2023.
He basically said ending it in 2011 was a mistake, looking back.
He did, and he's apparently looking at models like Sweden's, where everyone is sort of assessed, but only a smaller group actually gets called up for basic training. It's a lighter touch than the old system.
Okay, so a softer form of conscription, maybe.
Possibly. And at the same time, he's also pushing to make the Bundeswehr itself a more attractive job. Better conditions, better career paths, trying to boost the voluntary side too.
And didn't the Defense Commissioner Eva Hogel propose something like a mandatory social year, not purely military?
Yeah, that's another idea floating around. A compulsory year where young people could choose between military service or maybe disaster relief or social care work. The idea includes an initial registration to see who might be suitable, and then trying to make the military option appealing enough to get short-term volunteers.
And you hear strong words from the top, like Chancellor Merz saying, whatever it takes. for defense. Plus, that language in the coalition agreement about reviving service being initially voluntary, some people read that as keeping the door open for making it mandatory later if needed.
It certainly leaves room for interpretation, yeah, depending on how things develop.
Okay, so the debate is happening, but here's maybe the biggest immediate problem. Even if they decided politically, yes, we're bringing back conscription tomorrow,
No.
they couldn't actually do it right away, could they?
That's the crucial practical block. Minister Pistorius himself said it very clearly at a NATO meeting. Quote, conscription doesn't help us at all right now because we simply don't have the capacity, not in the barracks and not in training.
So it's not just about laws or politics. It's about physical stuff, bricks and mortar and trainers.
Exactly. He said they need to build those capacities first. Think about it. Processing, housing, feeding, equipping, and training potentially tens of thousands of new conscripts every year.
Yeah.
You need massive infrastructure, barracks that might have been sold off or repurposed since 2011, training grounds, huge amounts of basic kit uniforms, boots, rifles. And critically, you need experienced instructors, NCOs, and officers dedicated to training recruits. Germany just doesn't have that capacity on the required scale anymore.
So rebuilding all that,
Yeah.
that takes time.
Yeah.
Years, probably. And serious investment.
Definitely years, not months.
Okay, let's pull this all together then. Germany's putting serious money on the table. Big defense budget increases. A major ambition to be a leading military power in Europe.
Right. But the real choke point, the limiting factor right now, it isn't the money, it's not even the advanced equipment necessarily, it's people. Finding them, keeping them.
And the result of that bottleneck, plus the fact that even solutions like conscription would take years to implement, it means that big goal, strongest conventional army in Europe, well, the source calls it a longer journey.
It really underscores that military power today isn't just about budgets and tech. It's fundamentally about having the people willing and able to serve and having the systems to support them.
And this whole situation, it's such a clear example, isn't it, of how national policy, money, demographics, social attitudes, past decisions, and current geopolitics all tangle together. If you're studying current affairs, especially things like state capacity or security challenges, maybe for UPSC or similar exams, this is a perfect case study.
Absolutely. It shows the complexities in a really stark way. You can have the political will, you can allocate the funds, but if the societal foundations or the practical infrastructure aren't there, achieving those defense goals gets incredibly difficult.
And like you said, it's not just Germany. This resonates across much of Europe, facing similar demographic headwinds and changing views on military service. So wrapping up this deep dive, the dilemma is clear. Germany wants to build a much stronger military and is spending the money, but is hitting a fundamental wall finding the necessary personnel.
Which really leaves us with this big question to think about. Given these demographic facts across Europe and the public mood, especially among young people, how can nations like Germany actually balance this urgent need for stronger defense with the reality of recruiting in today's society?
Right. Are there other models? Beyond just going back to old-style conscription, what new incentives or completely different ways of thinking about national service might be needed to get the people required for a modern military?
It's a massive question, touches on policy, society, strategy. How Germany and others answer it will really shape Europe's security landscape in the years ahead.
It really will. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Germany's defense personnel challenge. We hope this gave you some useful insights into this really complex and important topic, whether you're studying it, preparing for exams, or just keeping up with global events.
Yeah, exploring these tangled issues is what makes these dives worthwhile.
Absolutely. If you found this look at Germany's defense dilemma helpful, please do like and subscribe. That way you won't miss our future deep dives into key global issues. And please leave us a comment, any questions this sparked, any thoughts on how this connects to your own understanding or studies. We'd genuinely love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.